Okay, everybody, I just want to welcome you to the webinar. Thanks for coming. We will let a couple of other people jump on if they want to. I just wanted to go ahead and do some quick housekeeping items just to make sure that we're ready to go right at 1. I have muted all of you, but if you have any questions at any point in time during the presentation, please unmute yourself, raise your hand, chat in the chat box, whatever you need to do, and I will try to address all of the questions as you have them. I'm also available after the webinar to answer any questions. I'll stay on as long as we need to so that we can really hammer out the things that, that are important to you during this period. I am getting ready to give you a lot of information, and it may feel overwhelming at times, but just be reassured that all of these webinars are recorded. I will try to put all links that I'm referencing in the chat window. I can also send a compilation of all of those links in an email after the webinar is over. So I definitely want you to feel like you can go back and review material if I went over something a little bit too fast, or if you just need a little bit more time to kind of digest the material. This is also a really great opportunity for you to experience what your students are getting ready to experience as we enter the remote instruction period. A lot of our instructors will choose to do these Zoom style meetings, and I'll go over some of the options that we have. But it will be interesting if you, throughout this webinar, just take some time to reflect on what your experience was, what you had trouble with, what you didn't have trouble with, and then as we work towards converting your materials for online instruction, what you can anticipate from your students, what kind of barriers that they may have, what kind of hesitation or resistance they may have. So it's going to be a really interesting time for all of us. So I'm going to go ahead and get started now. I am going to share my screen in just a moment. But before that, I want to cover what I plan to review during our time together. The webinar is supposed to last an hour and a half. If you don't have time for to stay on with us, jump off at any time, rejoin us at any time. This is very flexible. And like I said, it's going to be recorded and posted out so that if you're not able to stay on the whole time with us, we will get that information out to you. So the purpose of this the workshop is to really guide you through the process of converting your traditional course materials that you've already prepared for the semester. So keep that in mind, you already have a lot of this stuff, and how we're going to navigate the online environment so that we can prepare our students for the remote instruction period. So at the end of the webinar, I hope that you'll be able to do a couple things. I hope that you'll be able to discuss what kind of options you have at ETSU in terms of how you're going to deliver your instruction. Because as a faculty member, you really have some flexibility and authority to determine what your remote instruction period experience is going to be like. And I want you to definitely pick the modality that is right for you as the instructor as well as your students. We're going to go ahead and create news announcements that direct our students to different places in the learning environment. We've polled a lot of students in terms of how they utilize D2L, and that polling has informed us that students really rely on that news tool. It is the first place they come to when they open up your course in D2L, and so that news tool has the power to really create the precedent for your course. So we're going to learn how to maximize the usage there because it is truly very powerful. We're then going to create some weekly instructional modules, and we'll talk about what's going to go in those modules, what you can think about in terms of what information you're going to give to students, what information that you may want to reconsider. In the online environment, which is much different than the traditional face-to-face classroom, we'd like to section our information into 2 different categories: need to know and nice to know. So you have a really good opportunity to visually distinguish your need to know from your nice to know information. Then we're going to start talking about populating those modules. How do you get your stuff into D2L? And how do you make sure that it's accessible? Because again, these students that are going to be coming into your class, they have not prepared for online instruction before. So we need to make sure that every piece of content that you're putting up there for students is maximum usability. And what I mean by that is students are able to easily get to it, navigate to it, navigate through it, download it, and interact with it should that be appropriate. We'll talk about all those considerations. Then we're going to talk about 3 different ways that you can deliver your instructional content. Just going back to the power of choice here, as the instructor, you have the authority to determine what modality you're going to use to deliver your lecture content. Then we're going to talk about assignments. Assignments in this online space work very different from the traditional face-to-face classroom, especially in terms of scaffolding. And what I mean by scaffolding is what is the information that you need to put up in D2L and provide to your students so that that ensures that they have the opportunity to be successful in that assignment. Lots of stuff to cover there. We're going to talk about the gradebook. It is important as we enter this period of remote instruction that you build out a gradebook. It's not uncommon for my traditional face-to-face instructors to not use the D2L gradebook at all, because that's just not something that is warranted in some of these more traditional classrooms. Totally okay. In the online classroom, however, we do have some expectations that we need to consider, and having students have consistent and reliable access to their progress in the course is one of them. And we are able to meet that need through the gradebook. Creating a gradebook in D2L is easy, and we'll look at how to do that. Then I want to give you a lot of resources, because this has been a very interesting time in the world of instructional design. And we have been blessed to be a part of really great instructional design conversations across all of the social media platforms. We have a lot of things and resources being released in LinkedIn, in the LinkedIn community, in the Twitter community, in the Instagram community. All of the instructional designers are really buckling down and just trying to be a resource for you as faculty as you move into some things that may be unfamiliar to us. And then finally, and sometimes most importantly, how are you going to get a hold of me and our office once the remote instruction period starts? I do want to reassure each of you that our office, Academic Technology Services, we are here and ready 8 to 7:30 every single day of the week. Once we move into that remote instruction period, we are actually going to expand those office hours. So our availability to you is going to expand. You are able to get in touch with us in a variety of different ways. And actually, I feel like our availability is probably increased as we move into this remote instruction period. So please, I want you to feel supported and like you have someone to call if you should have a question about pedagogical practices, D2L technical stuff, Zoom technical stuff, student success, student regulation, all of those buzzwords that are being thrown around right now. We are happy to serve as your one-stop shop for all of that information. Okay, so let's jump right into what we're going to cover. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. I'll keep it shared for the duration, and I'll make some annotations as we go along. But I want to first talk about some of the options you have as we move into this remote instruction period. So the first option that you have, and I'm just going to create a PowerPoint as we're going along through here, and then we'll use this PowerPoint to upload to D2L. The first option that we have when we're talking about modality choices for you is completely asynchronous online instruction. Okay, so I'm just going to type this out, async online instruction. So this is going to be, assume a couple of things: that your students do not log in at the same time. Okay, so your students have no obligation to meet you live in the learning environment. This is also going to assume that your instruction is ready to go before the weekly instructional week starts. So So this is going to assume that all of your instructional content, what the students need to read, watch, and do, all of that stuff is ready to go. Now that can be very difficult as we enter the remote instruction period starting on Monday. So I want to encourage you then, let's talk about how we can maybe conquer this week by week, okay? Also, when we are creating asynchronous online instruction, the instructor's subject matter expertise, I'm going to abbreviate the SME here, that subject matter expertise is going to be something that's a little bit less interactive, okay? It's going to be either a video that you record, it's going to be lecture notes that you've typed up, it could be an audio file or a podcast if you are interested in doing that. It could be a narrated presentation. Now, I want to make sure that I make a good distinction here. If you are going to follow this asynchronous online instruction model, what we typically recommend in a best case scenario when we have time to develop online courses is that any sort of visual aid that you prepare for your students, whether it be a PowerPoint presentation or something else, that PowerPoint presentation typically does not stand alone in an online class. For example, if you just upload a PowerPoint to your D2L site, that would be similar to coming into the classroom, your students all being there, you bringing up the PowerPoint presentation on the projector, and then you leaving the room. So your visual aid is there, but your instruction may not be there. So it's important that we supplement the visual aid that we're providing to students with something that communicates our subject matter expertise. And that's where we can look at a lot of different ways that, that we can deliver that content. We also want to, when we're choosing the asynchronous online instruction modality, we want to assume that all of the assignment scaffolding is in place. And I mentioned this briefly when I opened the webinar, but the assignment scaffolding is going to include the following. It's going to include that your assignment folders be set up already in D2L, that you have instructions that cover not only what the assignment entails, but how, and this is very important, how the students are going to get that information to you. And this can be a challenge in the online space, especially when we start talking about culminating projects, student presentations, group work. All of these things are possible in the online environment, but some of them take a little bit more elbow grease than others. And I just want to be very transparent about that. Okay. And then we need to talk about grades and feedback. So when you enter a period and you have chosen the online asynchronous online instruction mode, your grades and feedback, you need to set a precedent for a turnaround time here. So some things to think about. Asynchronous means that students are logging in at different times. You are not interacting simultaneously together, that all of your instructional content is ready to go before the week starts, that you have somehow compiled, composed, recorded, or produced otherwise some sort of subject matter expertise lecture content, that you have considered the assignment that is due for that week and ensured that it is ready to go in D2L, and that you, I said grades and grades, that you have a proper workflow in place for grading and feedback turnaround and how to get that information back to students. Okay, so there's option one. Option two is going to assume that you are going to host now synchronous online instruction. Now, synchronous online instruction is very similar in that most of these things can be borrowed over, but with one key difference. Synchronous online instruction assumes that you and your students are logging in at the same time. So this could be very similar to how you're operating in the face-to-face classroom. You have set the expectation for your students that they should log in with you during a particular date and time, and then be ready to stay online throughout the duration of the class period or however you've arranged it. Now, synchronous online instruction also assumes that your materials be ready to go before the video class begins. So this would be facilitated in the exact same manner that we're meeting now using the Zoom platform. The other key difference here, and this is very, very important distinction, your subject matter expertise, so your lecture, your class discussion, whatever it is, your subject matter expertise is not a part of the content module. Instead, you are delivering that live just as I'm delivering this information now. Your students have the ability to go back and watch a recording of the instruction, but the expectation is that you and your students are logged in at the same exact time, and the intention of that login at the same time is so that you can deliver your instructional content live. Students have the capability to interact with you, ask questions. You're able to determine pretty quickly those same kind of inherent classroom signals and cues. If you see that students are getting the material, if you see that they're maybe not getting the material, there's an open dialogue there that's happening. Now, this does alleviate some of your responsibility in terms of what you have to put together beforehand, because the assumption is you're going to be delivering that live. If you choose the synchronous online instruction option, it is imperative then that you communicate this expectation to your students, because synchronous online instruction assumes that there is still an attendance policy. And this is kind of tricky. This is especially tricky when, because we have synchronous online classes, ITV classes, things like that. And for those classes, students are required to participate live during that class session. If they do not sign on, that's essentially equivalent to an absence. So there's reports in Zoom that you can pull for participation. So for example, you can see when a student logs in and when a student exits a meeting, all kinds of different stuff. And Patrick and the gang hold webinars for all of the Zoom stuff. But the biggest thing is there's an expectation there. Well, as we're moving into this remote instruction period, one of the things you need to consider when you're determining whether you're going to teach asynchronously or synchronously, and I wish that there were an easier and shorter word for that, is what is the realistic expectation of your students? And that's kind of the conversation that's happening in the instructional design world right now, because you have to consider a couple of things. While synchronous instruction may be easier for you as the subject matter expert, less preparation and less preparation on your part in terms of having materials and lecture materials ready to go because you're delivering it live, the student is truly carrying the burden there. So for my students who have purposefully not signed up for an online class, who now find themselves in this remote instruction period, they may not have reliable internet access. So them even joining you would be a problem. Even more so than that, they may not have a computer. That's also very common, actually. We hear from students all the time, even students who are enrolled in online classes currently. Some of them find themselves without a computer. So is it realistic to require your students to join you live? Well, that's something I can't answer for you, but it is something that I want you to strongly consider as you're choosing which modality to pursue when we're moving into this remote instruction period. So just before we go on and jump into D2L, asynchronous assumes that everyone is logging in at different times. There's no set time that the students have to log in. There's no set time that you have to log in as the instructor. But it also assumes that your lecture content is already ready to go, or that it is being planned to roll out on Wednesdays or Tuesdays or whatever works best for you and your schedule. Synchronous online instruction assumes that all people, students and instructors, are logging on at the exact same time and they're going to interact live. That's going to facilitate classroom discussion. That's going to help with that assignment scaffolding. You're able to verbally tell them and explain and expand on what your expectations are for the assignment, as well as how students get that assignment to you. So there's a little bit more flexibility there in terms of what you would have to place in D2L. But the burden then falls on the student because they would have to somehow find a way to meet you online during that time, and they may not have the resource to do that. So again, completely up to you as to which modality you're selecting. So let's talk about what that all means and what that's going to look like in D2L. So I'm going to hop right on into the learning environment here. And I have with me a completely empty course. So for my traditional face-to-face instructors, every course at ETSU also has a course in D2L built automatically. Your students are already in there, you are already in there, and everything is ready to go. You're able to use D2L as much or as little as you want when you're teaching an on-ground class. So now that we're moving into this remote instruction period, it's imperative that we populate some things in here so that the students really and truly know what's going on. So a couple things, I just want to hit some highlights here as we start building out our course and talking about transferring course content. First of all, just a couple things about the learning environment. First, the way to get there. The easiest way to get to D2L at ETSU is to just type in the URL, and that is elearn.etsu.edu. So again, that's elearn.etsu.edu. I'm going to place it in the chat here. I recommend typing in the URL as opposed to either Googling it or going through the ETSU website or going through GoldLink or anything like that, just because it is the surefire way that you can get to D2L and know that you're in the correct spot. elearn.etsu.edu. Notice there's no www here, okay? So, once you're in D2L, you'll notice a couple of things. First, you'll notice that you have a news widget here. This news widget is going to contain all university level announcements. So anything that we feel is imperative from our office to communicate to you that is D2L specific, that's going to live here. Anything related to Zoom that is imperative for your D2L course, that's going to live here as well. And then you have your My Courses widget. So this is one of two ways to get into your course. You should see all of your courses here, and literally, I mean all of them. This should be a historical account of all the courses that you've taught here at ETSU in your tenure. If you have lots and lots of courses in this widget, you can notice then that it's organized by semester. But note that the semester organizational method here is alphabetical. So keep in mind that if you're wanting to reach spring, it's going to be all the way to the right of this menu. So you may have to do a little bit of clicking to get to spring 2020, okay? If you don't have a lot of semesters, no big deal. You can just click on the course if it's displayed for you. It's going to display the first 12 courses that you have access to, but you can always go to all of your courses by clicking on the View All Courses link there at the bottom of the screen. Okay. The second way to get into a class is to use the Select a Course menu. This Select a Course menu is right up at the top of the page here. I'm circling it with my mouse. And I can click on this 9-square grid, and my courses, the same courses that I have access to, are going to populate down below. I can quickly search for a course if I have more than 15 courses available to my account. I can scroll down. I can locate any course pretty quickly. Once I locate the course that I'm needing to jump into, I just simply click on its name. And then I'm taken to that course homepage. Every course in D2L assumes the same navigational structure. So every course should have this or a comparable navigation bar inside of it. It's organized by function. So you see the communication link group drops down to access tools. So does the evaluation, course tools, and A to Z menus. The edit course menu brings you to the opportunities for you to take some administrative actions into your course. You can control start and end dates. You can control what the homepage looks like. You can configure what the navigation bar looks like. We typically recommend that you don't change any of these things just to make sure that it's continuously consistent for the student. Okay, I'm going to hop back over to Course Home. Course Home is where you're going to post news announcements for your class. So this is important because, again, just like I said at the beginning of the webinar, students land here first. Every time they access your course, they will be confronted with this course homepage and thus the news tool. So this is your opportunity to truly engage and continue cultivating that community of learners with your students. Having them see consistently posted news announcements, whether it be weekly, whether it be bi-weekly, whatever you feel is appropriate, that's a way for the students to know that you are also staying engaged in this instruction. It's also a great way, especially as we enter through this remote instruction period, for you to set some expectations as well as provide guidance to your students. So one of the top instructional design best practices that we can offer here in the office to you is to really focus on your first impression of your course, as well as tell students an actionable way that they can get started with the materials. And what better way to do that than creating a news announcement? And you can populate this news announcement in several different ways, and we'll take a look at that. So let's go ahead and get started. So to create a news announcement, now if you've never created one, you can have this quick link to create a news announcement by just simply clicking on the hyperlink here. But oftentimes you may have created some, and then at that point we'll need to use the context arrow. Now you'll see the context arrow or this downward facing arrow throughout the learning environment. Anytime you see a downward facing arrow, know that it holds a context menu that contains the properties for that particular asset. So for here in the news tool, I'm able to quickly jump down and select new news item. Here, first create a headline. So this is very similar to the subject line of an email. You need something that's going to really tell the students what the news announcement is getting ready to be about. I'm just going to say remote instruction period. Okay. Okay, so in the content, I'm going to start populating the news announcement. This is where I'm going to start communicating with students. Here, I really advocate for a conversational tone in your writing. Talk to students just as you would in the classroom. You can even address them, students, just like you would a letter, or just like you would good morning, good afternoon, whatever time of day it is. But really take a moment to forge an online persona or create an online persona that is indicative of your persona in the classroom. If you are witty and tell jokes and bring in personal stories, I encourage you to, very much encourage you actually, to continue doing that in the online space, because that is going to really foster that sense of community inside of the online environment. And that sense of community is truly what is going to set your course apart and keep your students engaged. If they know that you are speaking to them just conversationally, just as you do in the classroom, you're logging in consistently, you're posting consistently, that's going to actually encourage them to do the same. Model the behavior that you want your students to follow. Okay, so I'm going to continue populating the news announcement. So I'm going to say, welcome to the course. To get started, click on the content tool located in the course navigation bar. Yeah, it's hard to type and talk at the same time. Okay, so I have told them an actionable item. Click on the content tool. You can even say content link if that's more clear to you. Click on the content tool located in the course navigation bar. Now keep in mind I selected my text, and using my keyboard shortcut, I clicked Control B for bold. You can also do that in the formatting ribbon up at the top. A couple things about bold, italicize, and underline. Those functions are visual emphasis only. They actually do not transmit in terms of accessibility. So if we have students that require an accommodation, you want to be mindful that sometimes your visual indicators like bold, color, underline, things like that, sometimes that may not come across to some of your students that may not, that may have a disability. So just be aware of that. Another great thing that we have had a lot of student feedback confirm is students want to know what you're going to do that week right in the news tool. So this week, we will study how to place content online for remote instruction. You'll need to complete the following activities. So here at this point, this is where you're going to tell your students what are your expectations of them for the week. What are they going to do? What are they going to watch? What are they going to read? What are they going to complete? What are they going to discuss? What are they going to turn in? Whatever it is. So maybe you want them to, I'm going to use the bulleted list here because I like whenever I use a list to use something that's pre-formatted, again, for accessibility reasons. Read chapter 3 in your text. Okay. Watch the chapter 3 lecture video. Participate in the chapter 3 discussion board. Write the spelling there. And then submit the chapter 3 quiz. Okay? So maybe that's all that you want them to do. So this week we're going to focus on read chapter 3 in your text, watch the chapter 3 lecture video, participate in the chapter 3 discussion board, submit the chapter 3 quiz. Okay? But what's something that you notice about all of the things that I've put? That chapter 3 is a part of all of them. So when we are entering this remote instruction period, naming conventions and consistency will truly rule the success of your course. So whatever you choose to call your instructional unit, make sure that you are naming and following that naming convention throughout the week and throughout the information that you're going to place in here for your students. Okay, you can sign off, read citation, whatever. After you have composed your news announcement, scroll down. News announcements are always going to populate with the current date and time. If you want to stagger the release of these or roll them out periodically, you can control that release using this start date. End date removes the news item from the news tool. I typically don't recommend this here. Attachments. This is tricky, okay? I want to be very transparent. The attachments button is going to allow you to attach a file, which is really great. Except, let's say that you have attached your chapter 3 lecture video here. You have no way of tracking that. Students may miss it. There's a lot that could go wrong. So I typically dissuade instructors from using this attachments capability when adding required course content. Okay, there is a really great place I'm going to show you in the content tool where you can add all your content and it's trackable, which means that you're able to see which students accessed it, which students did not access it, and how long they accessed it for. So that could be hugely beneficial to us. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and just ignore the attachments button and not worry about these additional release conditions. I have some options here. Publish means that this news announcement based on its start date is going to be immediately ready for students. Save as draft, keeps it on the instructor side only. I'm going to go ahead and publish. So now when I return back to my course homepage, I see that I have a news announcement. My students know that I need them to do something. They know that these are the deliverables for the week for them, and they can go ahead and get started. Now we can even expand on this news item once we populate our content, and I'll come back and show you that at the end of the webinar. So that is essentially how you're going to create a news announcement as well as keep up in the course with your engagement, or how you can truly demonstrate your engagement. A couple things to remember about the news tool though. I want to be really transparent here. The news announcement, when you post a news announcement, it does not email out to students. Actually, students do not receive any sort of notification unless they have decidedly turned on their notifications inside of D2L. And we can go over that there at the end. That's something that I can show you if you have interest. But students only see this if they log into your course in D2L. So typically what I do is I like to copy my news announcement right after I've created it, copy it. I'm just going to highlight it and copy. And I'm going to hop over to the class list. Inside of the communication link group, you'll find your class list. Again, it's already populated with your students. I'm going to hop in here and I'm going to use the email class list button. I'm going to click email class list and you'll notice at the bottom of this page you have a blue send email button. Now typically I like to share this with my instructors. Processes in D2L begin and end with the blue button. If you've not clicked the blue button, you've either not started or you're not yet finished with whatever you're trying to do. So I'm going to click the blue button and I see that my students are already populated in here. Okay, that's awesome. I don't have to worry about their email addresses or leaving somebody out, anything like that. Everything is already in here. I'm going to go down into the body of my email and I'm just going to paste my content. Oh, I don't know what that meant. I'm going to paste my content right in here. So that same content that I just sent out in the news tool, I'm going to send out to my students in email. I can change the subject line. By default, it's going to be the course code and course title of my course in D2L. I can use the same title that I used as my headline in my news tool, or I can choose something different and I can attach files here. Again, not a recommendation here. The send buttons at the top left of your screen, again, blue button. I'm going to click it because I'm finished with this workflow. And there I have then sent that same news announcement out to my students. It took only a couple of clicks, only a couple of minutes. I only typed it once. I used that copy and paste feature to copy the information that I typed in the news tool, paste it into an email, and send it out to my class list. So now I feel like I've covered all my bases. I have created a welcome message that told my students how to get started in the class and what was required of them that week. Then I immediately emailed that out to my class list so that I could really try to encourage engagement using both of those mechanisms. So now let's go build some stuff in D2L. If you're going to build all of your instructional content inside of the content tool, the content tool is organized just like a book. It has chapters called modules, and each of those modules should represent some sort of unit of measure. When we are working with instructors to develop online courses, we typically recommend that you have one module for each week. Now, you can have multiple submodules or nested folders inside of that week, but having that weekly structure does a couple of things. Number one, it helps with pacing. So regardless of how you are presenting the content, know that your students are coming into your course under that weekly mindset. We've really been conditioned by the calendar to, our week starts on Monday. So on Monday, I've got a bunch of stuff to do, and our week ends on Sunday. It's just how our calendar is set up right now, or how we've adjusted. And so we really like for those instructional units or modules to mirror that style. So that before you can even begin creating content or adding things to this site, you've got to decide on your module structure. So over here on the left-hand side of the page, you see a table of contents area. This is where you're going to begin creating your modules. To get started creating, just click within this Add a Module text box. Just single click, and it's going to open a text box. Now, very much like the news announcement we just created, a best practice here is to create a Getting Started module. Once you've typed in the name of your first module, simply click the Enter key on your keyboard. That module's created. Now, we're going to create the other module so that we have really a backbone structure for our course. So I'm going to click within Add a Module again, and I'm going to type week 8. Maybe it's week 8, maybe it's week 9. You'll have to check your calendars for that confirmation. I'm going to type in week 8 and press Enter. I'm going to type week 9. Type week 10. So I've got 3 modules here. So my students know immediately, okay, for week 8, I need to cover this material. Everything that I'm going to cover for week 8 is going to be held within this module. There's no need for the student to go and try to hunt around where the information is in your course. It's all consistently and intuitively placed in its own weekly instructional unit. And that's really what we like to see. Build out your unit, and then repeat that structure over and over again. That repetition and that consistency really builds and helps students regulate through the material. Student regulation in the online course, we need to give them a little bit more guidance than we would in the traditional course, just because we're not there to get those visual cues or those body cues that say, I'm not sure I'm getting this, or I don't know what all I need to do. So we really need to be overly prepared, really, for our students. And using these weekly instructional units or modules is one of our key pieces here. Now, I will say that I work with many instructors who may not be crazy about the weekly module structure. If you are one of those people who are like, Chelsea, I don't know, I don't think that the week's going to work for me. Here's my recommendation. Whatever you decide, make sure that it's consistent, and make sure that it's intuitive, and make sure that whatever naming convention that you want, you have all of the material for that thing in a central location. Okay, so maybe you're doing chapters. You don't necessarily care how long it takes a student to complete a chapter of activities. Well, all information for that chapter needs to be inside of there. Some instructors choose to organize their course by assignment. This can be a little bit tricky because it could contain multiple weeks. So that's where we want to really be aware of what we're doing. Let's say we're covering a unit on, let's say I'm teaching a marketing course. And of course, for marketing, you got product, price, place, and promotion. You've got those things. We're going to be talking about price. Well, my price lecture in the traditional class, that's going to span like 3 class periods or even 6 class periods. I need a way to break that up for students. So regardless of your instructional unit, make sure that you're chunking, what in the instructional world is called chunking. Make sure that you're chunking up that material into that digestible pieces, that you're not just kind of giving your students a whole brain dump of information and then kind of having them navigate through it in really no organized fashion. Really break it up into small segments that students can easily find, digest, complete, master, whatever you want to call it, but have it all together. If you want to give a little bit more guidance other than week 8, some students don't know what week it is. Some instructors don't know what week it is. You can always expand on this naming convention. So I'm going to open up my week 8 module here. And I'm just going to open it up by single clicking on it on the left-hand side of the screen. And you notice now that only module 8 is displaying on the right. Well, from here, I can single click on the module title and then give it a subtitle. I can say, let's say March 23rd, and then I can cover pricing structures. So I can give it a subtitle, anything like that. So I can really expand on my module subtitle here to give my students a little bit more information. Gives them the date and a little bit what the module's getting ready to be about. Now, you see the dates and restrictions here. I want to really caution you to maybe not use that feature in D2L. Dates here control whether or not a student can click on things inside of this module, which, there's always pros to that as well, just to kind of keep your community of learners together in a cohort. But what if somebody needs a little bit of extra time? Or what if someone had an extenuating circumstance they couldn't get to your material during that week? Putting dates here really does limit student access. So I really caution you against that. But what I do recommend is adding a description here. I love the description field in D2L. It is so nice to have. All I'm going to do is single click inside of it and a huge thing opens up. I can type in anything I want. I can add pictures, videos. I can add audios. I can format this in any way. It's really unlimited what I can do here. But in this description, I want you to add a short summary of what the weekly content is going to be about. This is 2 to 3 sentences. Some people do an intro video, like 2 to 3 minutes, says, hey guys, this week we're going to cover blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is that you're covering. Just a couple notes about this. Caution against some of the things though. What you don't want to do is put all of your required instructional content inside of the description. I know it's very easy. It looks very attractive to do so. I'm just typing all my stuff right there. But again, there's no tracking mechanisms inside of this description. And when I say tracking mechanisms, I don't want you to feel like you are like consistently stalking your students or spying on them. But you want to be able to see where students are falling off so that you can have an opportunity to intervene. Maybe somebody was progressing through your course and then just kind of dropped off. Well, as the instructor, you want to reach out and kind of grab them and say, hey, what's going on? So sometimes those tracking mechanisms can be hugely beneficial in advising situations and scenarios, just student support in general. So just a short description here. 2 to 3 sentences, nothing big, nothing elaborate, anything like that. So I'm going to click update once I finish typing my thing. Some instructors choose to have an image here. You can go to Canva, canva.com, and create little banners that illustrate what the content is, or maybe it's related to content. You can get as simple or as complex as you want in any space in D2L. So a short description is always nice to have. So let's talk about getting stuff in here. Getting stuff in here requires this blue new button. Again, all processes start and end with the blue button. So in the new button, you have a couple of different options. Now, most often, you're going to use upload files. That's going to assume that you have a file on your computer and you need it in D2L. The file already exists. You just need to move it over. So upload files is going to give you the option to do that. So I'm going to click upload, and then I've got a couple of options here. Well, the first option is always the best. It's going to be my computer, and then I'm going to click upload, and I'll be taken to my Windows File Explorer or the Mac Finder. So I'm going to browse around and find my file. So I'm just going to go to my desktop here. I've created a folder labeled remote instruction. This is something that you may want to consider. And I've put all my stuff in here. Okay. Well, I'm going to select one of my documents here and click open. And then I'm going to click add. Note that I'm not changing anything. My hands are totally hands off here. I'm going to click add. And now my Word document is here. Here's the great thing about uploading your content in D2L. D2L automatically displays for the student any of the Office Suite documents as well as PDFs. This is huge. So now my students can literally click on this item and view it right in what's called the inline viewer. This is really great. And one of the reasons why we are so adamant that instructors build out or upload their content within these modules. Students don't have to download the file every time they need to access it. Maybe they just need to see, when was that due? Or what were the grading guidelines on that? Or I just need to reference something quickly. They don't need to necessarily download the file. So there's one way. So new, upload files, click my computer, click upload, and go find your file. The second way is drag and drop. And this is really cool. So I'm going to not minimize, but I'm going to take my screen off of full screen. So now I see that my browser is here. So not taking up my whole window. And I see my desktop over here. So I'm going to open up this remote instruction folder. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Just use the cursor to drag and then make it a little bit smaller. Now from here, let's say I had a bunch of stuff. Maybe I had a bunch of Word documents because, again, you've probably taught this course before. You've probably taught it for years. And you've probably got a bunch of stuff kind of in your repository. Well, you can upload them individually in the workflow that I showed you, or you can take multiple files even, and drag them over. So I'm going to take my PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to drag it over. And then once I see that blue line dancing right here, the blue line, I'm going to release my mouse. That file now is uploaded in my learning environment. I can do that for an entire section of files. If I had 10 files here and I selected each of them, single click with the control key held down will allow you to select multiples. I can select 10 files at a time, drag them all the way over here, drop them in, and they're all uploaded. So that's going to really save a lot of time. So just know that drag and drop is available in D2L. So I can get in here. So what else do we notice? As we're uploading these files, this number is also increasing. This number shows to students too. This number tells us how many documents, how many things are in a module. And the awesome thing for students is this number starts at however many files are in the module, and then it decreases as the student completes something or opens something. Let's say that you have 10 files. The student reads the introductory file. Now they have 9 files. And it just ticks down. And it helps, again, just with that student regulation. Because students, again, they're going to want to know, bare minimum, bottom line, what do I got to do this week? What am I going to be graded on? When is it due? How do I do it? We've got to answer those questions. We've got to address all those questions. Okay, so let's say that you don't necessarily have a file ready to go. You need to just create something. Well, we can create it in the learning environment. Using this new button, we can choose Create a File. So inside of Create a File, it's your opportunity to literally create anything that you want. This can hold images, videos, a combination of both, text, anything that you want to add in the learning environment. So I'm going to say week 1, intro and objectives. Okay. Or maybe I'm just actually going to do this lecture material. Okay. So I'm going to use my week 8 lecture material, and then I'm going to start typing. Now, literally, you can copy and paste from a Word document. You can just type in here anything that you would like. Just want to call out a couple of things. D2L does have a couple of great features. Number 1, spell check. Hugely important here. But even more important than that, we have an accessibility checker. This accessibility checker assesses the information that you provided for usability. Do you have the appropriate headers in place? Is the information formatted in a way where a screen reader could navigate it? You know, how best do you organize your materials? The accessibility checker is going to help you with that. Now, if you are completely unfamiliar with everything I just mentioned, you're like, wait, headings, formatting, I don't know any of that stuff. I'm not a computer programmer. This is not my realm here. Completely understand? Luckily for you, we have HTML templates available. So using this selected document template, you can actually choose to, let me move my screen over here. You can choose to browse for a template. And inside of shared files, you should see what is called the Daylight HTML template. There's a video that goes over this workflow that I can include after the training. So this Daylight HTML template is going to give you access to module templates. From here, you can select from one of any of these things. So for example, I'm going to do a basic page. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to do a basic page. I'm going to click add and watch what happens. And then it's going to say, wait a minute, you've already got something in here. Look at this. It already formats my entire page. I have headings that denote levels of importance in my document. It's completely accessible, and just to be honest, it's a little bit more visually appealing. Now, don't charge yourself with having to do this. You don't have to. These are all extra things. But you can use these document templates to really diversify the presentation of your content. You notice here that these templates also come with a lot of instructions. Reading the instructions is going to tell you exactly how to manipulate this template. You can copy and paste. You can literally just go and start price. I'm just going to do pricing structures. You can just type over, just highlighting text and typing over it to replace this placeholder text with your own text. You can even change the image by single clicking on it and choosing this edit image or image options dialog box. So the opportunities are really endless. If you think, this is way too much for me, I don't want to deal with any of that, not a problem. Just type stuff in. Okay? The most important thing is the students have the information they need and they can navigate it. That's it. Okay? So I'm going to save and close out of here. Actually, I'm going to choose a document template just so that you can see kind of what that looks like. So I'm going to save and close. When I save and close, whatever I have completed in here is going to be then available for my student. So this is where you can do pretty much whatever it is that you need to do. You can deliver some lecture material. If you aren't interested in creating videos at all, totally fine. You're not obligated whatsoever at all to create videos. But you can use these HTML templates to type out your lecture notes, type out guidance for your students, type out case scenarios and case studies, type out anything that you would like. If you wanted to add a video, you can even do that too. Let's look at how to do that. So I'm back in my module. And let's say that I have an amazing video that I want to bring in. Maybe I've created an amazing video. And that video lives in YouTube. So I'm going to go over to the ETSU D2L YouTube channel and just grab a video from there. I'll place a link to this channel in your in the chat here. So I'm going to literally just upload, or I'm just going to open up a video. Okay, so here I'm going to bring up this how to use annotations, which is the inline comments in D2L. So I have a video up. I'm simply going to copy the URL, and I'm going to come back to my D2L class using the blue new button again. I'm going to create an audio or video, and I'm just pasting the link in and clicking save. And at that point, my students have access to the video. Now, there's a couple great things about this. Number one, it's large in D2L. It's like almost full screen in D2L. So the students are able to watch the video without having to navigate to YouTube, try to find the video, whatever else. But you know what else isn't here? Let's go back to YouTube. This toolbar, this recommended videos or up next videos. You don't want your students getting lost in this rabbit hole, right? So I'm going to close out of that. But if I come back here, my video is playing. Another great thing is it still lives in YouTube. So no playback issues, no usability issues. It's going to play. I know it's going to play, and I'm confident that my students can play it. The student then, because also it's in YouTube, they've got a couple of options. They can increase the playback speed. A lot of students listen to videos on double speed or 1.75 speed. I know that I do for my lecture videos. They can manipulate the playback speed. Most importantly though, there's captions. Videos in the online space require captions to ensure accessibility. Okay, so if you place a video on YouTube or if you record a video in Zoom, those captions are generated automatically. So that's something that you don't have to worry about. So that's a great way to add videos to your course. Let's say though that you have watched or attended one of our Zoom webinars and you're like, you know what, I'm going to use Zoom to record my lecture. I'm just going to go into Zoom and record my lecture there. Well, you've got a couple of options. After you have recorded in Zoom, let me sign in here, you have a recordings tab. And what you can do here is you can click on one of those Zoom recordings and then use this copy shareable link. Okay, I notice that I've copied that shareable link to the clipboard. I can come back into my D2L module, click on my week 8 instructional module, and use create a link from the new menu. I can paste in the URL and give it a title. And when I click create, it also plays. And look at this, the transcript is here. Zoom, when you record in Zoom, it's going to automatically caption your videos too. These are huge advantages to using these types of systems. Another thing is students can dynamically search for a term that you've said in your video. This is amazing for students because let's say that you kind of got on a roll, as I tend to do when I talk about D2L, if you haven't noticed. Let's say that you're down in the weeds about something pretty dense material, maybe it's talking about some abstract stuff, and the student's like, I have no idea what's going on. Well, they could come in here and type in a word like, oh, I think she said something about recording something. And I can search my Zoom transcript right here. It will highlight all of the areas where I say recording. And then if I click on one, it's going to automatically jump to that point in the video. And that is just really outstanding. Really, really outstanding. From a usability standpoint, for students, this is huge. If I need to go back and review material, if I am a student who has, maybe I have a disability and I can't, like, it's hard for me to listen to something, I need to read it, or vice versa. These captioning efforts are foundational for their learning. So when you're creating that video material, make sure that it has captions. How do you make sure that it has captions? Put it on YouTube or record it in Zoom. And you can embed either of those options right into your D2L content module. Again, some drawbacks here. What I don't want you to do is, using this video or audio link, upload a raw video file, like an MP4, something like that. I don't want you to place a video file in D2L, like upload it from your computer. That video file needs to be hosted elsewhere. Zoom, YouTube, Tegra. We've got a couple of options, and you can talk to me afterwards if you want to explore those options. Just don't put it in D2L. D2L does not have captioning. There's nothing that's helping the student in terms of playback and playability. It's possible that the student couldn't play it at all. D2L is just not a streaming server. It's a learning management system. So if we can place our content somewhere else and then link it or embed it in, that's going to be the way to go there. Okay? So we have added several different types of information here. So this is going to be your home base. Your job now is going to be populating this instructional content so that students are truly able to reach the weekly objectives as well as your course objectives. So take a look. Sometimes it's helpful here to perform an objectives inventory. What objectives have you already satisfied? What objectives are still outstanding? What material or lecture content or whatever else do you need to add to D2L to give your students enough instructional content so that they can truly satisfy that learning objective? And then how are you going to measure that mastery? Well, you're going to measure that mastery using a couple of different assessment tools in D2L. We've got a couple, and we'll spend the rest of our time talking about those. Inside of the evaluation module, you have a couple of different mechanisms. This menu of tools is going to be your one-stop shop for facilitating assignments in D2L. Okay? The assessments tool, this is going to be our quiz tool. We're not touching on quizzes here. It's a huge, big old tool. I'm getting ready to roll out an entirely new quizzes playlist that's going to be on YouTube that I can send out. Quizzes in D2L can be timed or untimed. There's also 11 different question types. You can always just do your standard multiple choice automatically graded test here too, but just know that it does expand to include some other opportunities. Discussions. Let's say that you have chosen to align with that asynchronous online instructional model, which is typically what I would honestly recommend in this kind of time period that we're facing. Discussions is your way to continue cultivating that sense of community with your students. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest. One second. I want to be transparent with you because I want you to have realistic expectations about discussions. Not all online discussions are great. Not all classroom discussions are great. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth to get people to talk about something. And so we've got to really think about what kind of prompts or what kind of opportunities we're creating for students so that they can discuss. If you're creating a bunch of discussion prompts that are essentially yes or no questions or something they could pull from the textbook, you may not be getting a lot of rich discussion. A lot of people use that term. I need rich discussions. You might not be getting that rich of a discussion in there. But let's say that you have presented some instructional material, and then in the discussion board, you're presenting a case study. The students have to then apply the knowledge that they gain through digesting that instructional content, and then apply it to that case study. How will they react? How would they handle a particular situation? So those types of open-ended discussion prompts encourage students to really expand on their application to practice. And that's kind of what we're going for in the discussion board. It's not necessarily about converting classroom discussions into online discussions. It's not really that necessarily. It's giving the students an opportunity to practice that application to practice, that knowledge transfer. How can they explore application of materials, application of knowledge in a kind of a lower stakes environment? Well, then on the flip side, you need to set some parameters and expectations. How many times should they post? How long should it be? And what am I going to do in there? As the online instructor, you do have the option to participate in those discussions. I see both. I see online instructors who participate wildly. I see online instructors who don't touch it at all. It's up to you. But let's talk about how to create one. In the discussion board, you have to create a forum, which is basically a folder. I'm just going to call this class discussions. You only need one forum. And then you create topics. So look at this, just the visual of this. I've created a forum. Do you see anywhere that students can interact? No, not yet. We haven't created one. Student interactions take place in the topic. So I'm going to go ahead and create a topic. Now, I get to choose a forum here. I got to place it somewhere. I get to choose the topic type. This can get interesting. I can have the entire, open means the entire class. My entire class list can see everybody's responses and respond to everybody. A group means that I have partitioned my class list out into small groups, and only that group can see its members' posts. A little bit extra elbow grease to get this set up. If something that you want to explore, give me a call and we can set those up. Very easy to do. I'm going to give my discussion topic a title. The first thing that I need to do is tell the students when this whole thing's happening. So this is week 8 discussion. This is also going to be about pricing structures. You see how I'm trying to really stay consistent in my naming. And then I need to do a prompt. So, you know, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. Now, I've got a couple of options here. I typically don't see these used a lot, but I do want to call your attention to this. I love this. Look at this. Users must start a thread before they can read and reply to other threads. So what this means is, if you check this box, students have to respond with their original thought before being influenced by the thoughts of their classmates. As an instructor, I love this. As a student, I don't like it at all because I want to know, well, am I on base or off base, or what did Carrie say, or whatever else. So this is really interesting, something to consider as you think about incorporating discussions. I'm going to hop over though. I'm going to scroll up to the top of the page, hop over to the restrictions. Here, I'm able to add a start and an end date. This is going to control whether or not the student can physically see that it exists. That's it. So start date says the student can see it after this start date. End date means the student cannot see it after this end date. So be mindful that this very much does control visibility. And of course, I think this goes without saying, but if a student can't see it, they can't post to it. So be mindful of that. Locking options. This is really unique, and this is actually the option that I use in my own classes. I want the students to always see that it exists, and I want them to see it after this thing is over, but I don't want them to post late. If you notice, the discussion board doesn't have a due date, but it does have these locking options. I can unlock a topic, and using the locking start date, I can make sure that no student posts before I'm ready for them to post or before I'm ready to read it. And this end date means that students are not going to be able to post after a certain date and time. This is essentially, that locking end date is essentially the due date. You have to have posted by this date, otherwise you're not going to be able to. You can still see it, see everything everybody posts, but you cannot post after this date. I really like that. Assessment, this is going to control how I'm going to grade these things. Okay, now I'm able to select from a list of grade items that already exist, and selecting a grade item here truly creates a connection between this particular discussion topic and a column in my gradebook. So there's definitely a connection there. If I don't have an item yet, like now, I can create one on the fly. I can click New Grade Item. I can say Week 8 Discussion. I can give it a point value. And I can click Save. So right like that, I've already created a column in my gradebook. Now it's very important, if you take nothing else from this webinar, creating an assignment, discussion, Dropbox quiz, creating an assignment in D2L does not automatically create a column in the gradebook. Those are two separate actions, and you have to complete them individually. So I created my topic, or I am creating my topic, and then I literally, using this new grade item feature, created my grade column. Those things they're very independent. They can be connected, but they're definitely two independent beings in D2L. D2L is going to also ask me to create or to enter a score out of again here, because again, two different entities, my topic and my grade item, two different things. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to save and close because that's all that I need. So now I have this. My students see that it's going to be locked after a certain time, and I see that it's connected to the gradebook. This is hugely beneficial when we go to grade. Let's hop over to the Dropbox. Oh, well, I do want to go back. One thing, two things. Couple things about student ability in the discussion board. Number one, students cannot delete posts in the discussion board. They also cannot edit posts. So if they misspell something or whatever else, there's no way for them to fix it. Okay, so they cannot edit and they cannot delete their posts. Once they post it out there, it's on the internet for forever. You can delete posts and you can edit your posts. So just be aware of that, but students cannot. Another thing to remember is that the discussion board, and this is the teaching philosophy. I just want to present both sides to you. The discussion board is meant to facilitate low stakes exploration of learning. Just like in the classroom, you are facilitating a discussion, people are feeding off one another, someone says something, somebody else doesn't agree, maybe they kind of go back and forth about that. But it's all very casual, right? Like it's not, sometimes the expectation in the classroom is that they're not necessarily presenting the information as formally as they would in like a written assignment, like an essay or something like that. I really want you to take that mindset and apply it to the discussion board in the online class. I do see sometimes that instructors will say, and use, you need to cite your sources and use APA formatting and blah, 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 and all these things. Just keep in mind about the limitations of the D2L discussion board. There's no way for the students to double space. They can do italicize and underline, and that's about it. So the APA formatting thing, I would really recommend just kind of not doing that. Again, totally up to you, but that's just my recommendation. But overarching recommendation is to keep it as that informal conversation that would happen in the classroom. It's okay to have them pull in sources. It's okay to require them to, and especially okay, depending on the level, you want them to make sure that they're incorporating literature and all that good stuff. But just be mindful of what the formatting limitations are. If you are very adamant about formatting, like you are an APA till you die kind of person, that is more of a Dropbox assignment. Dropbox assignments assume that there's some formality there, and the students are held accountable to that formatting. Students in the discussion board, it's really hard to hold them accountable for like formatting. Not necessarily in-text citations. You don't have to format those necessarily, but just be aware of some of the formatting limitations in the discussion board. Let's talk about the Dropbox. The Dropbox is to receive electronic student submissions. This could be papers, essays, anything like that. A couple of things it can't do, though. The Dropbox file size limit is 19.24 meg. I realize that doesn't mean a lot to some people. Nobody knows what 19.24 meg is, like in terms of size. I can tell you what it isn't. Most of the time, it's not a video or a narrated PowerPoint. Those things are big. and students can't submit big files to you. So if you are wanting to assign those kind of presentations and videos and these things like that, by all means do it. Actually, yeah, we're in the online space, let's do it. But there's some considerations as to how the student's going to get that to you. And we can definitely talk about that offline because assignments are so unique. But in the most basic terms, to create a Dropbox folder, you're going to click New Folder and give it a name, Essay 1. Now, here is where you're going to put your assignment instructions. Now I'm going to show you how to put the assignment instructions in, and then I'm going to show you why it's important. So I'm going to put in some assignment instructions here. In a 2-page essay, and then I'm going to really expand. These can be a little bit long. There's no limit here. But no, I want you to put all of that information in this instructions box. And you say, why? Why does it matter? Hang tight and I'll show you why it matters. So after you put some information in this box, make sure, again, that you tell them what your expectations are, what the thing should include, and then how to submit it to you. So all that info goes in here. We're going to go on down. Again, you've got some options here. Typically, you'll want individual assignment. 9 times out of 10, individual assignment. This is going to assume that only Chelsea can see Chelsea's assignments. Chelsea can't see Stephanie's assignments or Anthony's assignments, only see Chelsea's assignments. And that's typically what you want. Okay? Now, here, this is really cool and also very new. Submission type. Most often, you're going to want a file submission. This is going to assume that students need to submit something to you. Okay? Whether it's an essay, they need to upload an Excel document, upload an SPSS document, whatever they're submitting to you, as long as it's not a PowerPoint or a video file, that in case it's too big. So this is allowing students to upload a file to you. Text submission, though, this is really cool. If you are going to be facilitating those presentations, this allows students to send you a link to something, send you a link to a YouTube video, send you a link to their Zoom cloud recording, send you a link to whatever they use to create some Canva infographic, whatever it is, okay? But they can submit something to you by just typing in the box. They don't have to upload a file. This could even be a way for you to say completed or something like that. The students are typing something in a box to submit to you, not necessarily uploading a file. So you've got some options here. These are new, or text submission is new. Typically, we only had file submission. So text submission is something that you may want to consider. Okay, I definitely recommend the defaults here. Notification email, if you place your email in this box, you're going to get an email every time a student submits to this box. Evaluation and feedback, this is going to be, again, that connection to from the Dropbox to the gradebook. So my score here is going to be, let's say, out of 100. D2L, just so you know, D2L shows raw score as well as a percentage score. Okay, so I'm going to put a score out of 100 here because all my essays are out of 100 points. My grade item, I don't have anything here. But again, I can use this new grade item field, choose numeric, which means that I'm anticipating a number going in the grade essay 1. And I need my maximum points to match. See 100 here and 100 here. I'm going to click Save. Now I can even add a rubric. Let's say I've created a rubric in the learning environment. Luckily I have one here. I can add that rubric. If you want to create rubrics, get with me. We'll create a bunch of them. It's one of my favorite things to do. And then I'm going to scroll all the way up again, hit my restrictions tab. This is going to give me the ability to do a due date. I love due date in the Dropbox because number one, it exists, unlike in the discussion board. So I'm going to put a due date again on Friday at 11:59. I'm going to type in 11:59 because D12 will only give you 30-minute increments. So I've got a due date here. Now this due date is dynamic. So let's say I have a student, student A submits on April 2nd, and it's on time, even early. So good for her. Let's say student B, though, he submits on the 4th. I'm gonna go, be a little bit flexible now that we're in this remote instructional period, but I want to know if it's late or not. Well, this due date creates a benchmark in the learning environment, and it will show me in red text immediately a visual indicator of which students submitted on time versus which students submitted late. So I'm able to see. I'm also able to manually assess a penalty if that's something that I want to do. So just be aware of that. I have to manually assess a late penalty. It doesn't happen automatically. But due date creates that benchmark, which is different from end date. End date ends the student's ability to submit something to you. So if you have an end date here, then the student is no longer able to send something to you. So something to think about there. Okay, same thing for the start date. They can't submit something early if you have this start date turned on. Sorry, excuse me. Special access, this is going to allow you to give an alternative set of dates for a particular student or group of students. Let's say that somebody was in the hospital or something else. They need a different due date. Special access allows you to give them that. Quickly, let's hop over to the Turnitin tab. Turnitin allows you to enable originality checking on your submissions. So Turnitin is originality checking. It does not assess intention. So you can't, it's not a plagiarism detector. It allows you to see what the document is compared to and if it's original or not. Original being it's displaying characteristics of something that is pre-existing. You are the determining factor of whether or not it's plagiarism. It's going to show you a score, which means the percentage unoriginal, keyword there, unoriginal. So you want that score to be low, but you get to determine the thresholds. We can't tell you the thresholds, it's up to you. To turn on Turnitin, you need to first click the Enable Grade Mark folder. And then, after that's enabled, and sometimes it takes a bit, give it some grace here. After that's enabled, we'll choose Enable Originality Check. This setting here is what's turning on that Turnitin integration. I want to tell you though, my recommendation is always to check also this display box, because Turnitin, it's not my recommendation to use this tool punitively. Instead, using it as a teaching opportunity. I want students to know what their assessment or what their submission has pinged. I want them to see if it's pinged Wikipedia or a journal article or another student's paper. That can be kind of awkward, but it happens. I want it to be transparent. And then I want the student to know that I'm going to work with them to ensure that they understand why the Turnitin score is the way that it is. Okay? Just my recommendation, but you are more than welcome to do handle this however you want. But in order to turn it on, you must enable and then enable the originality check. And that's it. So when I save and close, I'm able to see SA1 and look here, a due date. This dynamic due date is going to send students reminders when it's coming due in 2 days. It's going to keep those benchmarks and keep it on the calendar. Anytime I add dates anywhere in the learning environment, it's always adding to the calendar as I go. So that's kind of pulling double duty for you. You don't have to do the duplicate work. Teachable is already putting those dynamic dates in the calendar for you and then displaying them to your students automatically. Okay, so I'm going to hop over to the gradebook just quickly to show you a couple of things. In the gradebook, on the Manage Grades page, this is where you're going to build out your gradebook. At minimum, you need one item for every graded, one item for every graded assignment in your class. You don't have to have categories, although you can. Notice that I already have 2 assignments here. I have my SA1, which I just created in the Dropbox, and then I have my Week 8 discussion that I created in the Discussions tool. And look over here. I have an association column. This is going to tell me where an item is connected in the learning environment. If I click on the question mark here, I'm able to see exactly what it's connected to. So I can go back if there's any sort of discrepancy, which typically there isn't. If there's any discrepancy, I can see what item or what activity the item is connected to. Hugely helpful. It's also important to note that you're not able to delete items that have an association. So if you needed to delete SA1, maybe you say, forget it, I'm not going to do that one. You can't delete SA1 out of the gradebook until it's out of the Dropbox. So just be aware of that. To create items, all you need to do is click on, again, blue button to start and end. Click on New Item, and then choose Numeric. I enter a name. This can be maybe week 9 discussion. And I come down and give it a max point. Default max point for all items is 10. Just be aware of that. You'll want to change that whenever you create items. Okay, and I can save and close. I would then repeat that workflow for every graded item that I'm going to track in the gradebook. As we enter this remote instruction period, we definitely do recommend that you keep the items that you've graded electronically available in this space. That way the student is able to consistently monitor their progress. And then, assuming that you have your items connected, you're able to see the interactions within your class. The intergrade screen is going to show you a student's current grade in the class, as well as if they've submitted something and the grade they've achieved on that item. Okay. The last thing I want to show you, after you have created your assignments in D2L, depending on the tool, go back into your content module. For the weekly unit that you've created, or whatever instructional unit you've decided to organize your class by, within that module, use this Add Existing Activities button to link to the assignments that are required of that unit. This truly does create a one-stop shop for your students in terms of your instructional units. They have their objectives, they have their instructional content, any external materials they need to review, and then the ways that they're going to be assessed. So I created a Dropbox and a discussion board. I'm going to add them both here. I'm going to link to my discussion by clicking Add Existing Activities and choosing Discussions. I'll have to click my forum, I only have one, and then click my week. Notice here, I have my week here, and then the prompt showing immediately to students. So students don't have to go back to something. You want to eliminate this back and forth between students or between your course materials. The assignment should contain the instructions. Okay, so I've got my week 8 discussion here. My students see the prompt here. All they have to do to start participating is to click it, and it starts that thread for them. Same thing with the Dropbox. I'm going to add existing activities here. I'm going to create a link to my Dropbox. I'm going to choose the Dropbox, and look here. The Dropbox comes over, the due date comes over, and they are able to see the instructions. Furthermore, when they click on this, as a student, when they click on the Dropbox, they're able to see that rubric that I attached. And that is hugely beneficial as we go to, as they go to complete the assignment in order to gain full points. The last thing I want to show you is how to preview your course as a student. You can go through your entire course as a student. It's not perfect, but it is something that's available. From your name in the top right-hand side of the page, click on your name and choose this View As. Now, if you see instructor here, you're already that, so you can change it. You can choose student, and viewing your class as a student, you see the call out here. You can then go to your course and navigate it as you would a student. Notice here I've got the information telling me how many things are inside of this particular module and how many things I have yet to open or submit. And if you notice here, on my weekly module here, it says I have 3 objects remaining. That's because I have not yet participated in the discussion and not yet submitted a file to the Dropbox, and I have yet to open this PowerPoint. So this is really helping students regulate through that material, helping them decide, okay, I need to do this, helping with student direction, all that stuff that just really encourages the students' persistence to get through the material. So this weekly module is definitely something that you want to think about. Make sure that you have all of your information in there, but most importantly, making sure that you're a true and visible part of the course and you are helping them make the connections between the course materials that you present and the course's objectives that you're trying to satisfy. If for whatever reason they do not see relevance in something, or if they don't understand a connection, they're more than likely going to, or they may, I don't want to say more than likely, they may choose to discard that piece of content or just not review it. So really be intentional. Separate the course from the nice to knows. Well, this will be a nice website. I'm going to put this website on there. What are they going to do with it? Where are they going to go? What do they need to read on it? Be very, very explicit, very, very transparent. And through this process, just exercise grace and understanding. If at any point in time you're like, Mayday, I have no idea what's going on, We've got tons of resources for you. I am available for assistance all day, every day. We have a D2L site for instructors and for students that walks through every single workflow for every single tool. This is found at etsu.edu/D2L. And this website is being updated continuously. If you see anything that's out of date here, message me and let me know, and I can work to make sure that it's up to date. This website is housed by, is organized in the same way that D2L is. We also have a ETSU YouTube channel. This, again, has over 70 videos, and it takes you through all the different tools in D2L. And if you are completely new to D2L, this new to D2L playlist, it's going to open up and take you all the way through the learning environment. How to create, how to grade, all that good stuff. Okay, so I'm going to link to the ETSU YouTube channel once more, just to make sure. Get that? Where's my thing? Some of the other resources that we have that are available, I'm going to close out some of these things here. Our academic technology page is also available. Here we have opportunities for training and online course development. All of our workshops are listed down here if you want to sign up for Zoom. If this was too much, you want to do it again, or maybe you just really like webinars, you can sign up for anything that we're offering through these workshops. These are also available on the calendar. But this website is etsu.edu/ATS. Let me get that for you here. Uh-oh. I stopped my share. Just going to share it back. ATS. On the emergency coronavirus page, we've got a couple of resources that I want to draw your attention to. On the coronavirus page, if we go down to faculty and staff and then go down to teaching resources, we've got a bunch of stuff here. We have some remote instruction guidelines. I also have taken a lot of time to put together this moving content online. This is kind of going to go through everything that we went through here, talking about things to consider, all that good stuff. So I'm going to, I want to link you to that website, Moving Content Online. Also on that page is an accommodations fact sheet. I would definitely read over this just to make sure that you are putting up information that's accessible to your students. I'll put a link to that document as well. One second. Okay. Another thing that I have found useful is this amazing educational resources. This is a repository of all of the free stuff that's currently out now. I know that textbook publishers are kind of opening up things. There's all kinds of resources, K-12, higher ed, everything. So if it's not applicable to you in the courses that you're going to move into the remote instruction period, it may be applicable to you and your kids or grandkids. I am going to give you access to this website. It's just amazingeducationalresources.com. This list of resources is being continuously updated by people, and you can actually add to this space too. But it just gives you a ton of different ed tech tools, like educational technology tools, to help diversify the presentation of your instruction. We didn't touch on that here, but we do have some pre-recorded webinars. I've did some webinars on interactive content as well as gamification of your course. These are kind of icing on the cake. Right now, let's just talk about baking the cake though. If you have any questions whatsoever, please do not hesitate to reach out. I want to go back here and give you my contact information. I am going to hang around after the webinar in case you have any questions. I know that it is a lot of info to go through, but here's my personal contact information. Please use it. I am really looking forward to working with instructors that I may not have crossed paths with if you don't teach online typically. I'm really encouraged that we're going to really create some good experiences for students where they don't have to go without instruction as we're facing a very odd time in our country's history right now. So thank you so much for your time and attention. I'm going to unmute everybody to see if there's any questions. And again, I'll stay on for as long as you need or want me to, but thank you again for attending, and I look forward to working with you as you work to build your online classes.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, this is Don Dale. I just wanted to double check one thing with you.
Okay.
I'm going with the asynchronous video recordings.
Okay, I think that's a perfect plan.
Okay, you say it's better in your estimation to do the a record in Zoom rather than downloading those to D2L, the videos.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because D2L this has no captioning ability at all. And the students would have to essentially buffer that entire video before it starts playing. So
Okay.
the usability there. But yeah, definitely record in Zoom. That's my recommendation.
Okay, and just provide a link in
Yep.
Zoom. Okay.
And I can go, you want me to show you again where that link is?
If you don't mind one time.
Yeah, of course. No, this is exactly what we're here for. So I'm going to log into etsu.zoom.us. It's very important that you go to etsu.zoom.us. You'll know you're in the right space because you see the campus in the background.
I'm sorry.
This is going to require your ETSU credentials and that two-factor authentication. So have your cell phone or email or whatever else handy that you use for that whole thing. So when you're recording in Zoom, because Zoom is really taking a hit right now, I mean, Zoom is really keeping our country afloat at this current moment. It's taking about 8 to 12 hours for videos to become available. Okay, so just be aware of that and plan for that. Because we had a meeting yesterday at noon. The recording of that video was not ready until today.
Oh,
so just be aware of that. And also, the longer the video, the more it's going to take to churn out. So just be aware of that. So once you're in your Zoom portal, this recordings link on the left-hand side of the page, click on your recordings, and then you'll just click on whichever meeting or recording that you had. So I'm going to just click this first one. And see, here's ours right now. It's still going on. So I'm clicking on my meeting, and right here, shareable link. This is what you're going to copy in D2L, or copy and then paste into D2L. So I'm going to click this copy shareable link, and then in my D2L course, let me hop in there. I'm just going to go into this first course here. It's quicker. In my D2L course, I'm going to choose, I'm in as a student. I'm going to choose new, create a link, and then I'm going to say Zoom lecture video or whatever it's going to be called, and then create, and that's it.
Very clear.
Recordings and then copy shareable link.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. You've been very helpful.
Awesome. Do we got any other questions? Anything you want to talk about? Anything like that?
Chelsea. This is Betsy Weems. If we have not been using, I use D2L, but not to this extent, so I do not use the gradebook currently. So if I have some grades that I already have in the gradebook that I keep manually, do I just go in and create items for them?
It's truly up to you. I'm going to be 100% honest. If it were mine, I would go ahead and just put those grades in there. I can actually help you import your grades. Do you have them in an Excel spreadsheet or something?
No, I just keep a regular manual book. So yeah, they're on paper in a grade book.
It's totally up to you. I think the recommendation right now is if it's being graded in D2L, it needs to exist in the gradebook.
Right. No, I understood that, but it doesn't make any sense to have just where we start here in there if students have previous grades.
I think that it would be. I think it would be advantageous for students to have access to that.
Yes.
But something to also note, and this is different than other learning environments. D2L does not, by default, show students their current grade in the class. It shows only the items and the points achieved for that item. So it's not like they have a current grade.
Which is good because I don't weight them equally at this point. So that was my other concern, is how to set that up so I could do that. So they would just be able to see what grade they had earned there, and it doesn't average for them.
That's correct. Now, it does on your end, and we can set up weighted gradebooks. We have a couple of different types of gradebooks to configure in D2L, and weighted is definitely one of them, and probably one of the more popular ones that people use. If that's something that you want to talk about offline, we can definitely do that.
Okay.
I really don't think that there would be a need at this point. Now, if this remote instruction period moves over to something more permanent, we may want to think about putting those other grades in there just so the students can be able to calculate their grades. But theoretically, you've probably already given them back assignments. They have their grades somewhere.
Right.
You know? And this would be a thing of convenience for them.
Right. That's what but I just thought, rather than having them look and say, oh, look, I got a B on this one, so now I have a B in the class, it's like a reminder to them that we've already had 2 grades.
Exactly.
Not have been B's. And that's what I was thinking, was it might be better to have those grades there in front of them to kind of balance that out. So
yeah. And you can definitely do that. If you need help with that, just give me a call and we can work through it.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. These are great questions, guys. Do you have any other questions? Anything about literally anything? I know it's a weird time right now, and I'm sure it feels very overwhelming. But if you need us, please reach out. We are more than happy to help, and we will sit there with you, arm in arm, right in the trenches, and help you get going. That's really what our office is all about. Anything else? Okay. Well, I'm not hearing anything. Doesn't mean I'm not available. I'm just going to go ahead and stop the meeting. If you have any questions at all,